Hello guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another tutorial, and a very special one today because I'm going to be teaching you the most devastating gambling trick that I can do with a deck of cards. It's not an easy trick at all and it will require practice and dedication, but once you've learnt it, you will have an absolutely killer routine in your repertoire that you can do with any deck of cards, borrowed, shuffled. It can have cards missing. There is no stack, no marked cards, no deck switch, nothing like that required. You can just take cards and do this miracle. The effect is this. You take a borrowed, shuffled deck of cards from your spectator and you explain that you're going to have an imaginary game of blackjack. Now, if you don't know the rules of blackjack, it is very, very simple to explain. An ace is worth either 1 or 11, and picture cards and 10s, obviously, are worth 10. The aim of blackjack, very simply put, is to get the highest value, but don't go over 21. So ideally, the perfect blackjack hand would be an ace and a picture card, or a 10, and that is as simple as it gets. You explain you're going to have this imaginary game of blackjack, and we'll just use this table here. To do this game of blackjack, you're going to ask your spectator to name any number of players that step up to the table to play this game of blackjack. Let's say they say 4. 4 players, but it can be any number. That is a free choice, there is no force required there. You take the deck of cards that they have just shuffled and you deal 4 players, explaining that this player right here is their hand and that you're going to hopefully make them win. So you deal your blackjack hands, we can get rid of the rest of the cards. That is the dealing done. So this is their hand, okay? This hand here has got a 4 and an 8, which is pretty rubbish. This hand here has got an 8 and a king, which isn't bad. It's a couple away from being quite good. This one here has got an ace and a 2, which is pretty rubbish whichever way you take it. So the other players aren't doing so well. But you dealt this. They named any number of players. And you just so happen to deal perfect blackjack for their hand. An ace and a king of diamonds. A perfect blackjack hand. And if I wanted to, I could take the deck right now, shuffle it, and do that trick again. Every single time you do this trick, no matter what, you will have perfect blackjack in the hand that they want. They choose the number of players, they choose which player wins, and that player has perfect blackjack. This is pure sleight of hand and a gambling miracle. It is one of my favourite tricks, and I'm very proud to be teaching it today on YouTube for free for you guys, and I really hope you enjoy it. This is Deal With It. Disclaimer. Disclaimer. Before we get into talking about how this trick is done and the techniques that make this possible, this is a big disclaimer. Do not use this trick in actual gambling. The techniques that I'm going to teach you in this video will give you the impression of winning at blackjack and cheating to win at blackjack. Under no circumstances do I recommend using these techniques in actual blackjack games. First of all, it requires you to be the dealer, so it's unlikely that you would use this in a professional setting. This is a trick, this is a magic trick, and it should only ever be used as a magic trick. With all that being said, let's dive right into this trick, which is called Deal With It. Some of you might recognise the name Deal With It, and that is because a while ago, probably about a year ago, maybe a bit more than that, I sold this trick on my website for £15. So giving it away on YouTube sort of felt wrong at first, but I had the idea and I couldn't let it go, and I thought that I would make this my first tutorial of 2020 to kick off with a bang, and also sort of raise the bar for my future tutorials so that I sort of continually get better at the tutorial thing. I'm relatively new to it. I think I've done about 15 tutorials, and I'm hoping to do a lot more, because why do we keep secrets? Why do we keep them? We should share them and share the magic. I don't think people are going to be watching this video to find out how a trick is done. I think they're going to be watching this video to learn a trick, and hopefully by the end of this video you will have learnt a trick that you can be really proud of, that you can add to your repertoire and you can go out and perform. Or if someone has a deck of cards and they go, "Oh, you're a magician, show us a trick, go on, I really want to see a trick," and then you've got to do something because everyone's up for it, and you go, "Yeah, alright, I'll show you this," and you can dive right into this trick. It looks like it should require setup, and it doesn't. Throughout this video I am going to be doing lots of performances of this because that's the only way of teaching it, so this will not be done the same way each time. That is something that you need to know from the word go, that this trick will not look the same way, it will not have the same cards, and you will have to improvise at the time. And that is something that is going to be very difficult to teach, but I'm going to try and teach as many different scenarios as I possibly can. And a scenario, we'll talk about a scenario, what exactly that means later, because there are lots of different ways that this trick could go out, because it really does genuinely rely on a shuffled deck of cards and a control. So although it is shuffled, you are going to have to control the two cards that are needed to make a perfect blackjack hand to the top. And I'm going to talk about controls and all that sort of stuff. Don't let that put you off. It is so simple. In fact, I will teach you the very first control, the very basic control. Let's imagine they've just shuffled the deck, so I genuinely will shuffle the cards and just imagine that this is the order of the cards that they use. I take them back and I look at the cards as if I'm just sort of examining, are these cards any good? And straight away I spot the cards that I need. I want you to do this right now. I want you to get a deck of cards and shuffle them. Make sure that it's a full-ish deck. There can be a couple of cards missing, but just give a deck of cards a shuffle right now, you watching this video. And then look through them. And what you're looking for is an ace and a picture card or a 10 next to each other. And it sounds like that shouldn't be something that happens very often, because there are only 4 aces and a handful of picture cards. But actually, when you think about it, there are 4 aces and there are 2 cards on either side of those aces. And out of 8 cards randomly picked from a deck of cards, the chances that none of those are 10s, jacks, queens, or kings is actually really, really low. But actually, I will find, straight away, I've found the ace of clubs next to the 10 of clubs. I have found the ace of spades next to the queen of clubs. Yeah, that's all of them. So all I'm looking for is the aces. I'm not looking through every individual picture card or 10. I'm looking for the aces, and 2 of them happen to be next to the cards that we need, the 10s. We will just call picture cards and 10s 10s. We'll just call them all 10s, just to make it easier. So we already found 2 aces next to 10s. And these are 2 possibilities. We'll call those possibilities. When you have an ace next to a 10, that's a possibility. And a way of controlling them to the top, very simply, if we just take these 2 and shove them in the middle, they've shuffled the deck, you take it back, you look through, you spot your ace next to a picture card, and you just cut the deck like so. That right there is a control. Cutting the deck. I often think that the less sleight of hand you use in a trick, the better it is. And a lot of people think that's a bit strange because I do sleight of hand. That's my job. Why do I want to use less of it? And I think the less you use sleight of hand, the less there is to see, the less there is to catch you out on. So if you can just cut the deck in plain sight of everyone and put the cards down on the table, then that's fine. That is a lot better than doing something sneaky when you don't actually need to. Cutting the deck is just a normal thing to do. People do that anyway. People take cards and cut them all the time. It's just a thing that you do with a deck of cards. So don't be too worried about trying to hide a control. You can do it in plain sight, and I do it all the time. Bearing in mind this is a trick that I performed for ages, for years I performed this trick, and half the time I did it, I would just cut the deck right in front of them, because that was the easy thing to do. The tricky part about this trick is that different controls work in different situations, and sometimes you can just cut the deck like I explained, or sometimes you will need to use a pass, although I don't use the pass that often in this trick, or just in general, because I'm not the biggest fan of the pass. I think it is slightly overused. It does have its place, it does have its uses, but maybe not so much in this trick. So I will just give the deck a shuffle, and what we'll do is we will imagine that this is the order, and we'll go through my thought process as to how I would deal with a new deck of cards. A deck of cards, an order that's never been seen before. Normally this whole process would happen very, very quickly in a short space of time, but I am going to go through it slowly, explain my thought process throughout the controlling of the cards. So the aim is to get the two cards we need, an ace and a 10, to the top of the deck. But also, an aim that we're also trying to do is set up future possibilities. So if I spot more than one possibility in this order, which I might not, and I'll talk also about what happens if there are no possibilities in a deck, although that doesn't happen very often. I don't know what I'm going to expect, so we'll deal with those problems as they come up in a natural way. So I begin to spread through the cards, and I am essentially looking for an ace next to a 10. That's what I'm looking for. And we have one right here, so the ace next to the king of spades. I am now so tuned into doing this trick that this whole process would take no time at all. But as you're starting out, this does not need to be done quickly. I just realised I said that I do this very quickly. You don't have to do this quickly. You can take your time with this, so long as you have good justification as to why you're looking at the cards like this. You can even claim that you're looking for patterns and trying to work out how best to deal the cards, or how best to influence you, or the spectator, whatever. You can make up your own reason for why you look at the cards. For me, I don't look at the cards that much, I just sort of briefly look through them, so there's not really much point in me trying to justify that. The line I often use is I'm looking to see if the cards are any good, or I'm looking to spot some pattern or something. That's the sort of thing that I use. But we look through the cards, we get to about here, we spot what we need. We spot the ace of clubs next to the king of spades, which is a brilliant order. Now what I can do is cut this to the bottom. I can just cut the deck like so and carry on with the trick. But ideally, I would love to set up a future possibility. So what I'm looking for now is I spot an ace here, I spot an ace here. I'm just sort of figuring these out. This one we'll use though, because we have an ace and then a card that we don't need, and then a card we do need, a 10. When there's a card between the cards that you really, really need, like the 5 of spades is, there's a very simple way of dealing with that. You can put your thumb on the card that's furthest to the right, and your fingers can contact that card in the middle that's in the way, and in a dragging motion, you essentially swap those cards over so that the ace is now next to the 10 that we need. That's a very simple thing, something that I use all the time. So that's one way of controlling cards together. I don't instantly need to put these on the top either. All I've done there is put them together. So that is all I've done. And I can use that later if I want to, so I know roughly where it is in the deck. It will save me having to look through the cards loads to find a pair of cards together that we need. I now know that that exists, I know roughly where it is in the deck. So there we go, I've already set up a future possibility. But if we go back to the cards that were together, these two, I can now cut these to the top like so, and I've set myself up for a trick. And I've also put an ace next to another card somewhere else in the deck. So that is my setup, my thought process. Let's shuffle the cards once again, and I will show you another possibility and how I would deal with it. So we mix the cards, and let's take a look at this and see what the deck throws up for us. So we turn it over, we begin to look through. Normally I would not look through and turn it to the camera, so this is a bit strange for me. But I look through, and all I'm doing is just looking for an ace next to a picture card. So we've got here 2 aces together. That's quite unusual. And if I spread through here, we've got a situation where there's a card between the cards we need. So you see this king, 4 ace right here. Again, I can do that move that I just explained of putting them together like so with a dragging motion and carry on, and there we go. We've now struck, almost at the end of the deck, we have struck the ace of clubs next to the jack of clubs, so that's perfect. All I can do is put 2 cards to the bottom, and I've set up some possibilities like that. So there we go. Another really cool way of setting up possibilities uses a shuffle of the deck. Now obviously I can shuffle cards very, very neatly like so. I can do that if I want to. And that's fine, it looks nice, but it doesn't help me in this trick. So what I would, actually suggest doing is looking slightly less professional than you really are. Obviously you can handle cards very well, but what you can do is you can say there's actually a shuffle called the Vegas Wash. So you simply mix the cards on the table like this, and as you gather them up and turn them to yourself to square the pack up like so, you're actually taking a look at lots of different cards. So right here, I've spotted an ace just there, so I might shove that to the bottom. Cards at the bottom are really, really good because they can be cut to the top after you've done the dealing, and also during the dealing. No matter how many players they suggest and how many cards end up on the table, it is very unlikely you will get to the bottom of the deck. So if you want to save cards for a future possibility, my recommendation would be to put them at the bottom of the deck. So I've got multiple ones here, and once I've done dealing, I can simply put those cards to the top as if I've cut the deck and we're starting with fresh cards, except we're not, because I've got an ace and a king on the top and then another, batch here. So that is a very sort of basic way of setting up the deck. I will show you once again. All you do is Vegas wash, you mix the cards around like so, and then you take clumps as if you're squaring them up, and you move the cards around as you're looking at them, as you're looking at the faces. I've got a jack here. You simply square, 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 take more clumps. I can see an ace, I put that on the bottom, and you continue like so. It's very, very simple. You look at the cards and you put them where they're supposed to be. One of my favourite ways of setting up a future possibility, or setting the deck up so that you can perform deal with it straight away, is through a shuffle. So you shuffle the cards yourself in the hands and it sets the deck up. So you take the shuffled deck back from the spectator, and by the way, little tip, just I'll sort of add this in brackets if you like, always get the spectator to shuffle. As hard as it may be for you to do the trick, and as many things as you might need to do very quickly to set the trick up, my recommendation is always get the spectator to shuffle during this trick. I have never performed this trick and not had the spectator shuffle. I think that it is so much more powerful when they do that. So that's just a little tip that I would recommend doing 100% of the time, get them to shuffle. Once they have, you take it back and you do the shuffle setup in the hands. So it's going to take the form, if you like, of a overhand shuffle. When I turn the cards to myself to do an overhand shuffle, straight away I've got an ace actually. What I do is I look through the deck for a card. So we won't use this ace, that's a bit too easy. But as we shuffle, we look through the deck for an ace, and I've struck one right there. And you can do this quite quickly. And as you do, you push it forwards with your thumb and sort of out jog it. And as you come to a 10 right here, you do the same thing. You close the deck up, you take these cards and you shove them to the top, as if they were sort of not quite squared up. I'll just put them on top to square them up. So that's your justification. We'll do it again. Imagine that we've taken the deck back. We begin to go through the cards. I've got a picture card right there and an ace. I can shuffle a few more on top. Then the deck goes, then these two can just go to the top. And there was a card between them, so I can just do that again. It'll be sloppy, it'll be messy, but so long as you set your two cards on top, that's fine. And I will leave little mistakes like this in. So just then, the situation we had was, I accidentally took out this situation with a card in between. So all I can do is just very quickly sort that out. And I'll leave that mistake in because that's natural, that's the sort of thing that you might encounter during this trick. You might also accidentally be in a situation where you've forgotten to do that. If you have forgotten to do that and you end up with a card in between the two that you want, my recommendation is that it's never too late to just switch the cards over like so. It's just a little movement. No one will even really notice that you're doing it. It's a tiny little moment. It just happens very quickly and then it's over and done with, and you have your two cards on top. Now, during that shuffle, you don't actually have to control them to the top, because as we were talking about with future possibilities, let's imagine that you take the shuffled deck back, you look through them for a card that you want to use, and right here we have the Ace of Diamonds and the Queen of Hearts. We'll use that as our possibility. Let's say we cut that to the top, and then we go for a shuffle. What you can do is retain those two on top of the deck, and do a shuffle to put some possibilities on the bottom of the deck. So as you shuffle, you take the top card from here and you shuffle again. So we've got a king, we'll put that to the side. We mix, we mix, we mix, we mix. Again, it's sloppy, it's messy. We have another ace, we'll put those to the top. Now what we can do is do the same thing again. We can drag this top card onto the lower half, put all of these here, shove these two to the bottom that we outjogged, and what we've done now is we've set up two cards on the top here, we've retained those, and we've set up two cards on the bottom to be used later. Again, it's just a little addition, and all of these things might be happening simultaneously. You might use one and then the other. It is about improvisation. These are building blocks, and together they will form the trick. but you need to know them all in order to know when to use them. One final thing I would recommend is called the glance. I call this the glance because all you're going to do is glance at the deck. So let's imagine you take the cards back from your spectator once again. They've shuffled them, you take them back. All I'm going to do is glance at the bottom card. And in this case, I'm quite lucky because I've got a queen. That's just good to know. So as you take it back, I would recommend always look at the bottom card because it might be helpful, and use your index finger to push the top card off as you do that. You take it back, you glance the top, you glance the bottom. In this case, even after shuffling the deck just then, you will be surprised how many times you end up with something like this. There is an ace on the top of the deck. After I've just shuffled, there is an ace on top, there is a queen on the bottom. That is, you know, quite a good little coincidence there, but this will happen more than you think. So just by checking, you can take that ace, put it on the bottom, and you've set yourself a possibility without doing any work at all. So now you can look through the deck and go into, I found the ace of clubs next to the king of clubs, that's quite nice. You can double cull that maybe and spread through more. What else have we got? Let's look. We've got the ace of hearts next to the king of hearts right there. That's really cool. So what we might do is put all of those to the top, retain that break. We can do a little pass and get those to the bottom. You know, it's just about sort of keeping track of these cards and making sure that they're in the right places at the right times. It's a lot about intuition as well. There's a lot of intuition that happens during this trick, and some of it will be difficult, some of it will really be tough, and maybe in the heat of the moment, under the pressure of spectators, you might not be thinking as fast and you might make some mistakes. What I would recommend is, during your practice, make mistakes on purpose, get yourself into tricky positions. I can't even say that. You know, make it hard for yourself when you're practicing. Don't make it easy. Do it as you would perform it. So don't sort of be thinking, right, okay, we'll look through the deck like this, and then, oh, that's quite nice. We've got an ace next to a king, that's good. So what I'll do is I'll put that to the top. Don't do it like that. Practice this as you're talking, practice the patter, practice doing it under tough situations. Because if you can practice under tough situations, then imagine how good you'll be when you perform. You know, if you're practicing and making it easy for yourself, and you go out and perform and you end up with a situation where there are no aces next to no tens, you will be stuck because you've not practiced what to do in that situation. So always constantly be thinking, what if this goes wrong? What if I end up where, you know, I've lost track of the aces and I've made a mistake, and what do? I'm in front of people. You should have covered that in your practice. That's always the thing you should be thinking about. Your practice should reflect perfectly your performance. I get that this is not ordinary. I get that this is not an ordinary trick to practice. There isn't just an A, B, C way of doing it. It's not linear at all. It's like a great big ball of wibbly wobbly tricky stuff, okay? So, you know, you're gonna have to think about your practice a lot more than just a trick where it's very linear. There's no set of instructions in this trick that's 1, 2, 3, do that and you've done the trick. It's not simple like that. You know, there's no order in which you can do these things. Again, these are building blocks, and put them in whichever order you want to make the trick work for you. It should become your trick, and that's something I can't stress enough. So, those are some of the controls. Now, if you know sleight of hand, if you know other controls, other ways of getting 2 cards to the top, use them. Absolutely use them. Really, I'm not holding back at all. I don't think there are any controls you shouldn't use in this trick. If you have a thing that you're comfortable doing, then do it. However, we now need to talk about the dealing itself. How do you make their chosen hand with their chosen number of players the winning blackjack hand? How do you actually do that? We're no longer going to be talking about the possibilities. We are going to imagine that all of that work has been done and that you've set yourself up perfectly to do it. Let's dive right into this. This is the exciting bit, and I can't wait for you guys to learn the dealing secrets of Deal With It. Many of you by now will have worked out what the false deal we're going to use for this trick is. So we have our 2 cards on top of the deck like so. In this case, it's the Ace of Diamonds and the Queen of Spades. Probably not ideal. I prefer it when they're either the same colour or when in the same suit. That's brilliant. But these are the 2 cards we're going to use. So these are now on top of the deck. We've done our setup. We're ready to go into the trick. And the first thing you want to do is ask them how many players step up to the imaginary game of blackjack. The explanation of this trick needs to be done really, really clearly. You can't be vague about this. You need to explain very quickly the rules of blackjack, just in case they don't know. You need to say an ace and a picture card or a 10 is a perfect blackjack hand. Then you're going to say, now we're going to have an imaginary game of blackjack. How many players do you want to be part of this game? Let's say they say 4. 4 is quite an easy number, so we'll go with 4. The first card you deal will be part of the winning hand. So one thing I like to do sometimes is say, okay, 4 players. Let's say you've said 4 players. 1, 2, 3, 4. Which player do you want to win? So you're giving them that extra level of choice. It honestly doesn't matter, it's a bit of a magician's choice because whatever player they say is the first card dealt. So for ease of teaching, let's say they say 1. Player 1 wins. Okay, player 1, fantastic. You're going to be player 1. So the first card you deal, if they said 3, we'd deal it here, 2, 4, etc. But they said 1, so we'll do it here. So they say player 1, fantastic, player 1 is going to win. You're now going to execute a second deal. If you don't know the second deal, that is completely okay. I'm going to quickly explain what the second deal is, but I have done a whole video on the second deal, which I do recommend you go and watch. So we'll take these cards out of the equation. They're going to be the winning hand. So imagine that this is the top card. It would normally be face down. I'm going to put it face up for teaching purposes so that it's easier to see the 2 cards. The second deal is essentially you moving the top card out of the way so that you can deal the second one. That's the very basic explanation of it. And to move it out of the way, you're going to use your thumb here. So your thumb is going to go approximately where the index finger meets it. So they're not going to touch, but it's going to be approximately where they meet. So it can be here or here, really doesn't matter, somewhere along the top. But not at the very edge, not over here. It needs to lie in a natural position. So once it's in that natural position, it's going to move out of the way so that your other thumb can come across and strike that card and deal it onto the table. And these 2 actions need to happen together. And the better you get at this, the quicker this opening can be, like so. So that's the second deal. You're also going to add in a thing called the tilt. The tilt looks like this, and it's what makes the second deal really convincing because the face card here is going to tilt away from the audience so that the edge of the deck is facing towards them as you do the opening, like so. So to the audience, there won't really be an opening, because if you're doing this, if you're doing the thumb action and the tilt together, I often compare this to a paddle move because it's sort of happening in the moment the spectator can't see. The bigger action hides the smaller action. This is the smaller action. The bigger action just hides it, and it's a nice sort of fluid moment. You contact the card with your thumb and the sort of pads of your fingers like so, drop it down, and there's that sort of rhythm to it. And you can do it this way, you can do it this way. It's honestly quite an angle-proof move. It's quite a fluid, rhythmic, that's the word I'd describe, rhythmic move. I can't speak today. So that's the second deal. Please go and watch my full video on it. It explains it in detail, all the psychology of it, where you should look and everything like that, which is really important for a deal like this. Imagining now that you know the second deal, we have our 2 cards here. They've said 4 players, 1, 2, 3, 4. They've said that player 1 wins. You do a first deal, and I like to make this a big deal. So I don't like to do it like that, because that's a bit too quick, a bit too small of a moment. They need to be really convinced that these cards are dealing to the table. And this first one, you're going to take it, and I do that. I know some people think that's a bit cringy, of, flicking the card like so, but I do that. I just give it a little flick and I just say, that's the hand that's going to win. I make sure that people are really clear that is the hand that's going to win. Now the other cards, you deal quickly, and these are second deals. So I'll do those again. We have the Queen of Spades on top of the deck. This is going to be a second deal, so I do this like so. That's second, the Queen is still here. That's a second, that's a second, and that's a first, and there should be no seam between it. So you should be able to go second, first, second, first, second, first, with no seam, no gap in between it. That's a great way of practicing, by the way, doing that sort of changing of one then the other. So that is how it should be done. Now, already we're set up, and these can be first deals or second deals. It doesn't matter because these cards don't matter. Once these are all dealt, I like to take the deck out of the situation because that can confuse people. So I just sometimes put it to one side. As we do the presentational bit of revealing the cards, I like to leave their hand till last, just as a nice little dramatic build-up. So it's like 1, 2, 3, their hand. So we go 1, 2, 3, then their hand. I do it quite slowly. You could have said any number of players, you could have said any player wins, but the chosen player gets perfect blackjack. And as we were talking about before with sort of opportunities, There's a king and an ace right there, so sort of be thinking about that as well as you do it. These two cards, as you gather them up, just sort of put an ace next to a king, which is quite a nice thing to do, and then you can put those on top of the deck and you've got yourself a possibility. What I sometimes do is, if I've got a possibility set up, these two cards don't need to go back into the deck. In fact, I often think it's better if they don't. It's sort of a sign of, we did that, now let's do it again, but we'll leave those there as a reminder so that they know it's not just the same two cards coming up time and time again. So again, you can say the same thing again. How many players do you want? Let's say they say 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Which player do you want to win? We'll go for a change, we'll go number 2. So you do the first one, number 2, player number 2 is going to win. We'll do these two players like so, we'll deal the cards, and right there I've done it. So these two players obviously lose. You can point out how close to blackjack they were, so you can say this is 17 and this is 16 or whatever, and then you can reveal, finally, the other two cards, and you can add that to the winning stack, take these cards out of the picture, and you've got yourself a nice little blackjack cheating routine, just using the second deal and some controls and shuffling. And essentially, that is the trick. So that's deal with it. You can see now that it's all about improvisation. What happened there has never happened for me before, but I'm so confident with all of the different techniques that the way it happens doesn't matter. So sometimes people say ridiculous numbers for players, and you've got to deal with it. That is why it's called deal with it, because the situations that are thrown up, you deal with them. And so let's do a ridiculous situation. Let's imagine that we've got a spectator who is not playing by the rules. And let's go really silly. Let's go 10 players, alright? 10 players. Go along with it. Okay, so 1 player right there, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Is that 10? I don't know if that's 10. We'll do that. Okay, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It is ridiculous. This would never happen. But we've got our winning hand right here, if you can keep track of that. There might be a chance that someone gets perfect blackjack. And if they don't, you can point out just how unlikely it is that you do. So no one's got it so far. Oh, that's close. Okay, what I like to do at this point is point out the best hands. So this person's got a good hand and this person. The others don't really, so I can get rid of those. And if you want, as you're doing this, you can put some situations together. So an ace and a king right there. And you can pop that on top of the deck, which is here. So what I've done there is I've loaded an ace and a king on top, just a little addition. So I like to point out the best hands on the table. So these have got 20 and these have got 20. But only 1 player has got perfect blackjack, and that is the player that they chose, which has got a matching ace and a king of hearts. How lovely. There we go. That is Deal With It. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to click the thumbs up down below. And if you've watched to this point of the video, then I think you'll like my channel, so make sure to subscribe to the channel down below as well for lots of amazing tutorials throughout the rest of this year. I make videos a couple of times a week, sometimes a bit more than that, so if you did enjoy it, make sure to subscribe. If you were a fan of the cards that I've been using in this video, I got these from thecardin.co.uk, so make sure to go to the Card In. It's not really a sponsored video, they just sent me these, and they are amazing cards that I use really quite a lot actually. I don't really go for designer cards all that often, but these are really cool. So if you want some cool cards, the Card In is the place to go. This has been a blast, thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video.
I think you're gonna have to be We're gonna have to go to Paris. And soft.